Opportunity to welcome all of you. We're sorry about the date change, but Christmas and Thanksgiving, other things go on in the church that I guess have priority over what we're doing, but we're glad that you're here. I'm pitch hitting for Jerry Haas, who is on his way to California to do a wedding this weekend. And he was going to go tomorrow, but he got frightened with the airlines, the way they're operating. And he decided to go a day early so that he'd be sure to be there for the wedding. So I'm sure the bride and groom will be happy when he gets there. 2 weeks ago, he was in either New Hampshire or Vermont for a wedding. So I don't know what's going on with all these weddings that he's having to do. But anyway. Well, we're glad to welcome Cynthia Wolcott with us. She's been here before, and she has a service that we can all use. From when we first start to know that we're having a little difficulty, all the way through till the time that we die. I just found out that she even goes with us, or with you, me, if I get to that point, where she'll even go to the doctor's office with you. So when you go from one doctor to the next, she'll be there to manage it and to take care of it. So we want to give her a welcome, and we're glad that you can be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Oh, I've got microphones on. I'm wired up 220. So my husband accuses me of that, but I don't often actually act it out. So all seasons in-home care, talk a little bit about what keeps me fed, I should say. No. What keeps me alive, because I retired 3 years ago and decided that I wasn't quite ready to retire. I was just sick of the corporations. And so doing 5 hours of paperwork nobody read, and lots of rules and regulations that kept me from doing what needed to be done for people. So I started this little business. My granddaughter came and joined me 2 years ago, and now we're up to 14 employees, 3 care managers, and we're doing an amazing job. And so we got actually Home Health Agency of the Year, the Reader's Choice this year. We won the category for Reader's Choice. So that was exciting, considering we're just a baby company. So excited about what we do. Today, I wasn't sure what to present on with the audience here. I know that we're all dealing with some type of memory issues of some sort. Our family member, caregiver. How many are caregivers? Show me a hand. Okay. And so, a lot of caregivers. So I decided that I was going to focus on our mental health today and talk a little bit about the self-care. I don't know if you've had anything on that recently, but I know that that's one of the most important parts of the journey that we're on, that we're all on as caregivers. So it's important that we talk about those things. So care management is what makes us different from every home health agency, because we come in, we're like the daughter that you wish lived next door. So we come in and we have experienced advocates. We come to the doctor's office. We show up in the emergency rooms. We do everything in reference to the medical care system. We used to have a primary care that used to do everything. They took care of us, and we had one place to go, one person to ask. Now we've got a dozen people, that we have to see, all of these different appointments and things. So we're 24 hours on call. We come to your homes. We help in any way that we can to advocate for you. We develop a relationship. We had a gentleman that hired us on as just care managers. He didn't have us coming in doing additional care in the home, but just as a care manager. And so he calls me from the emergency room, and he says, I've got to have my gallbladder out. His wife had dementia. He says, so I went and picked him up from the emergency room, took him up north to the hospital, Northwest Hospital, got him checked in up there. I called my team. They went out and took care of his wife. We stayed with her, took care of her, met all of her needs. While he was in the hospital, we went and picked him up and brought him back home, and then took care of him for a couple of additional days. So we are that warm hug. We're the daughter that you wish lived next door. And that's what we do. So, and everything in home, large or small. We have some people that we're doing 24-hour care. We have others that we just show up once a week and just reassure them that they've got a plan B. So enough for our commercial. And so this is the end of all seasons until we get to the end of the program. But call us, we'll come out and talk to you about what's going on in your lives, and we'll let you know how we can help. So if you want to do that. So we're going to talk about a few different things. One of the things that we need to think about, I tell everybody that's on my caseload, is you need to have a bag in the closet that's ready for any emergency. A copy of your DNR, copy of your living will, a charger for your cell phone, phone numbers of the people that are important. Most of us have phones or some sort. Everybody has a handout for these. Yeah, so there's a handout for the slides, so you don't have to take notes and do all of that. So don't stress about it. I love paperwork. I love to hold things still. I don't like the computers, so I always make copies for everybody to take home. So they have everything. Put a small amount of money, in that bag. Your medical cards, copies of everything. Make sure that you have copies in that bag. A medication list and maybe even a few of your meds, just in case you need them, But this is something that everybody should have, in their closet by the front door. And then if a paramedic comes, you say, grab that red bag or grab that blue bag, that's in the closet, because it has everything that I need. And so then you're sure you have everything with you and you're not frantic. You don't know how many people call me and say, bring me my phone charger, bring me my phone list, And so then I'm running back and forth to the hospital, getting them all the things that I've told them they need to do ahead of time. So nothing is permanent. Don't stress yourself too much, because no matter how bad the situation is, it will change. So whether it's better or whether it's worse, it's going to be different. We're going to be dealing with something different tomorrow. So it's best to prepare for the worst and then hope for the best and never have to need it. So that's what we tell everybody. Here's another list. I got this list when they had the fires in California, because people need to know where all of this stuff is. When your loved one passes, whether it's something you're expecting or whether it's not, you're going to need all of these things. You're going to need that information. So that's all in your handout also. But, these are things that you need to know where they are. And I love the people when I walk in and I say, well, where is your, and they pull out the book that has everything in it. I said, yes, I love it. And so we're going to talk a little bit about our mental health now. And what is mental health? It's a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, and can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution in life. So that's mental health. This is where we all hope to be. That changes as we age, doesn't it? I'm talking about mental well-being, and it's important. It is more important than the absence of mental illness. It's feeling happy, it's feeling content, it's feeling the ability to cope with the day-to-day stressors and life productivity, to interact positively with others and to realize our own potential. So instead of looking at what's depressing, look at what's a blessing. So we need to all look at the lighter side of life. Because if we stay focused on the heavy side, if we stay focused on what's wrong, it's going to take us down. So it's really important to spend that time, focusing on your blessings. And sometimes I tell people that it's hard to find. It may just be that you have matching socks on today. So, you never know. So why mental well-being is important? Mental well-being is one of the most valuable assets that we have. Nearly every human being is likely to meet the criteria for a mental illness. I don't know about you, but I fit in the DSM-5 quite well in a few different areas. Like any health condition, mental health problems can affect a person's functioning at a substantial cost to everyone. And so when we're dealing as a caregiver, it drags us down. One of the statistics I read, I think it's gone down a little bit now because I think people are taking better care of themselves. But at one point, that 65% of the caregivers over 85 passed before the people they were caring for. A large number of people. So we have to actively build our resilience and nurture our mental well-being. It's very, very important as caregivers that you focus on those things. So 5 ways to well-being, is connecting, giving, taking notice, keep learning, and be active. I see Chris on the road all the time with his speed walking. So I see some of you out there, doing some of those things, and it's important. Why the 5 ways are important, like physical health. We can all benefit from looking around at our mental health. Research has identified 5 simple things that we can do, the 5 ways. So if we practice them regularly, we're going to build resilience. And we're going to develop a good mental health. There are benefits for everyone, even if you're not dealing with the big issues that you're dealing with. So do what you can, enjoy what you do, and move your mood. So be active, do as much as you can to keep yourself busy. Respite care for your loved one. We're starting a foundation the first of the year, and it's going to be all seasons foundation for senior care or something on that order. I can't even remember the name of it now. It's to get funds to help support caregivers, education-wise, respite-wise, funding for those who've outlived their resources. So this is something that's in the works right now, and we hope to get it up and running by the first of the year so that donations can be made that we can help support the adult day program. Some of the other programs where we can get help in through grant programs, to provide additional supports for caregivers. So that you can get out and be physically active. You can go back to your pickleball or whatever it was that you were doing before you became that caregiver. Discover the physical activity you enjoy, the one that suits you at your level of mobility and fitness. Just go for a walk. I have a 94-year-old that walks every morning 2 miles, and then she goes to the fitness thing at the Lutheran church. And then she does that. And I said, you've got end-stage heart going on. On the days that you're doing the other, you need to stay away from the walking. And so she has followed my advice. And so she's doing 1 a day rather than trying to do it all. So step outside, cycle, play a game. She also goes down to the neighbors who's 100 years old, and they play dominoes. Rummy Cube, there you go. Yes, any of those things. So anything we can do, giving of your time, giving of your words and your presence. I worked with Green Valley Cares for quite a while they were up and running. And they had volunteers that would call people every morning and just chat. So those of you that are at home caregiving, give people a call, find out from your church, find out from your neighbors who needs that additional support. And by helping others, we're helping ourselves because it's going to lift us up when we're feeling like we're doing better. It's one more than just sharing material things with others. It's a cultivating the spirit of generosity and activity supporting others. So it's really important just to smile. I make it a point to smile and I hate these people that walk around with their face down on the ground trying not to notice anybody, because I make it a point to say, hi, how are you? And I'm going to get their attention. And I'm going to say hi, I'm going to say good morning. So get their attention, find a way and it's going to lift you up. Volunteer your time, join a community group. I love that you guys are all here because this is the best kind of support that you can get. You're educating yourselves, you're finding other people that are on a similar journey. So take notice. One of the things that we've all forgotten how to do, is take notice of what's out here. You know, the desert's not the most beautiful place in the world, but it has its beauty. And so going out, looking at the flowers, you know, just remembering the simple things that bring you joy. This 94-year-old, I went for a walk with her on her 2-mile walk, and she stops and looks at every tree. Look at that tree, look at, you know, and she brings my awareness to the beautiful things around us. And she really takes the time to look at those things and catch sight of the beauty around her. So remark on the unusual, the things that look different to you. Notice the changing in the season. I notice because my nose starts running. As soon as that cool weather starts, you know, the faucet starts. So savor the moments, whether you're walking, working, eating lunch. I've always been a fast eater because I'm always on the run. And I'm learning to slow down, savor what I'm eating, enjoy those moments, you know, because there's joy in everything that we do. And it may just be having lunch. Connect, talk and listen, be there and feel connected. One of my downfalls is I'm a leader. I'm not a good listener. And even though I've learned to be a good listener because of being a mental health therapist, I've had to spend hours, you know, in rooms with people listening to what's going on in their lives. And so I've learned to be a good listener, but I'm still not great at it. I like to talk more than I like to listen. So I'm better at this. So build a support network when the times get tough. You know, connect with somebody here, connect with somebody in your neighborhood. And I know it's hard when you're dealing with dementia or death and dying. People don't want to talk about it. They don't want to deal with it. They want to run from it. So it's really difficult to find people. But there are people out there that have traveled a similar journey and can connect with you and help you navigate that. These are the cornerstones of your life investment, time in developing them. So spend your time getting that connection. Keep learning, embrace new experiences. I was up at 1:30 this morning. I laid in bed till 10 o'clock. I finally decided, well, this is not working. And my brain was going, and I'm thinking, okay, this ADHD again. And so I got up, turned the TV on, and I started streaming medical advancements, and they were talking about dementia and the new medications, you know, that are out there. And it was a doctor's seminar. And so the neurologists, and so they were talking about all of these new medications and this very small percentage of success that's measured by any of these meds and the cost related to them financially, time-wise, and everything else. And there is no real data that says any of this is working yet. We're doing better, we're learning, but there's no answer yet. And so that was pretty discouraging last night when I was on this doctor's seminar. It was way over my head. You know, the graphs and the statistics were way above me, but I got the gist of it. So sign up for courses. A lot of GVR stuff going on, and take advantage of that. You know, work on something at home, puzzles, whatever works. Yes?
Ollie is fun too. It's kind of my recent discovery.
What, Ollie?
Mm-hmm.
Never heard of it.
Classes, they give them, they're online or at the Performing Arts Center off of Continental.
All right. Is it just are those acronyms, Ollie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody know what it stands for?
I saw a sign, I think at Safeway on the wall there to sign up. Yes. Yeah. All right. Yeah, all of those things. Anything that you can get involved in. And cooking your favorite food. I know we've all gained weight as caregivers, you know, because that's what we have to do. So grief, we're all traveling a grief journey, whether it's one piece at a time or whether it happens all at once. Maybe it's our own physical well-being. Maybe it's the fact that Chris can't do that marathon anymore. We're all dealing with our own individual losses. So, we need to know during our grief journey that it's okay. It's okay to feel the way we feel. It's okay to miss them. It's okay to cry. It's okay to laugh. I traveled a 15-year journey with my husband, had a chronic disease. And when he passed away, it was like grief and relief because the journey was so tough for so long. And so it was like a cage that opened up. He was a musician, so I always had to carry his musical equipment everywhere. He had bass amps and guitars and a big doghouse bass that had to be carried. So I always had a minivan. When he passed away, I sold the minivan and got a convertible. It was like, I can let go of that, and even though I love him, I wouldn't trade anything for the 40 years we had, but I wouldn't want him back the way he was. And so it's a tough journey. So it's okay to be angry. I know we all think, oh my gosh, I'm mad at God because of everything I'm going through. And it's okay. He understands the journey that we're traveling. And it's okay to love again. I'm remarried. My husband lost his wife after 60 years of marriage. I lost my husband after 40, so I tell everybody we've been married 110 years. So, and we should know something by now. So I think we're doing all right. So it's okay to remember, he and I still call each other by our spouses' names, previous spouses, because we had 40 and 60 years with those people. And so even though we're in a new relationship and we love each other, that part of our life is still there, and it's okay. It's okay to be honest. It's okay to trust again. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And every day is a new day, a new journey. And we're grieving every day, as we're saying goodbye to the person that we used to know so well, because they change on a daily basis. And it's not easy. And things that you don't get told. I have a handout that I give to people and I do workshops on that, but it's a thing that I put together. It's a checklist of things you need to do after the loss of a loved one. And nobody knows, what to do after that event happens. And so I have a checklist that I've gotten off several websites, and it's just it's a reminder of, okay, I need to do this and I need to do that. So, things that you can do. The grief brain. I think I had the grief brain most of the 15 years that my husband was sick. But after he passed, things seemed to clear up and I seemed to do okay, after that. The grief brain causes confusion. Sometimes you think you're getting Alzheimer's because of the changes in your brain. And like I said, I had it during the whole journey with my husband. But until my sister died 2 years ago, I didn't really realize what that sudden loss grief brain was like. And I was going down the interstate, forgot where I was going, because my brain was just, it's amazing. There's a book, The Grief Brain, from a professor at U of A, and it is called The Grief Brain. And it's amazing. It's a little heavy, on technicalities, but it really gets into what that grief brain is all about and how it affects you. You'll grieve the secondary losses, loss of income, loss of the cruise that you'd hoped to take, loss of the traveling, loss of the companionship, loss of somebody to watch the movies with you in the evening. Evenings seem to be the toughest times for everybody. Just because that's when we were the stillest. That's when we spent our time with our mate, and enjoyed each other's company. So death happens. Most of us don't want to think about it, not them. And I have that handout, so, at some point I'll get that to everybody, but I didn't bring it with me today. So all seasons in-home care. Please call for a free informational. We'll come out and talk to you. One of the things that was shared with me is that somebody had concerns about, when am I supposed to be done?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock? Oh, we got lots of time then. So someone mentioned to me that there were some concerns about when to place. Is there anyone here that had thoughts about that or questions about when to place? You want to share?
Well, we're not there yet, but I know that's coming up.
So,
and I've always heard stories from others, we waited too long. And it's not just a place, but it's, do we keep our home, or do we move to something that's sort of like La Posada? Or what?
There again, evaluating your financial resources. 50% of the assets you have belong to the caregiver as well as the person that's traveling the journey. And so remember that, those assets are there to help protect you as caregivers as you age. You're going to have needs also, that are going to need to be met as we age. Unfortunately, we're not all blessed with that. I tell everybody I'm going to drop going to somebody's door someday, and that's going to be it. But we're not all blessed with that kind of death. And so it's important that we think about our futures too, and how the assets are going to work for you. So getting advice from a geriatric attorney, somebody that's familiar with how to protect assets and how to keep it so that you have resources for your care, when that time comes as a caregiver. Placement, is a tough one. I have had a lady that placed her husband, and then she was there all day, every day. And I thought, why did you do this? If you weren't going to take some time for yourself, if you're going to continue to care for them, every day. And I know it's important that we advocate for our loved ones, when they're in placement, and that's part of what we do too, Part of what we do also is work with people that have been placed and their families are 2,000 miles away. So we continue to be that advocate with feet on the ground, to make sure that everyone's being cared for properly and to advocate for them when family's not around. But the facilities here, we don't have a lot of options. They're pretty limited, so planning ahead, so that visiting the places ahead of time, getting an idea of what you would like to do, with placement. The memory cares are pretty limited. And so it's important. Anybody have any thoughts on, have you visited memory cares? Yes.
I talked with the gals at the health fair we had here recently. They told me all the memory cares are full. They're having to send them to Tucson.
Yes. There's transition, continual transition in all the memory cares. And so, but they stay full in this area.
I guess it means you get on a waiting list if that's what you're choosing.
And there again, the people on the waiting list, you might be the 25th down, but you go fast. because they find other things, you know. So it is good to be on, if you have a preference as to where you want to go. Yes.
But we have heard so often that they are short-handed.
Absolutely.
And that's the problem. So if your loved one is placed, you want to be there to
Yes.
make sure
Yes.
they get the excellent care.
Yes. And she just said that she's heard that a lot of places are short-handed. And so you need to be there regularly to make sure that they get the care that they need and to make sure that, you know, their needs are being met. It's not always in their best interest to have you there every day because it's difficult for them to adjust, you know, if you're there constantly. And so allowing them to be in their environment, allowing them to adjust to the new caregivers, you know, all of that is important. You know, I know that most of the memory care will ask you to not be in there for like the first 10 days to 2 weeks, allowing your family member to adjust to the new normal so that becomes more like home to them. And if you're there, you're going to be tortured because they're going to continually say, why can't I go home? Why can't I go home? And there's going to be that conversation, you know, every day.
We experienced that as kindergarten teachers.
Yes, yes.
Same thing.
She said she experienced that as kindergarten teachers. Same thing. You know, those kids wanted to go home where they felt safe, where they were comfortable. But with dementia, sometimes they don't even know where home is. It's some place from their early childhood that they're thinking about. You know, that they're just, in their mind, they're in a different era, you know, than we are. So home doesn't necessarily mean the same thing to our dementia people as it means to us as caregivers. Yes?
So do we have any geriatric attorneys here in Green Valley?
They're not in Green Valley. She was asking if there was a geriatric attorney here in Green Valley. There are a couple of good ones in Tucson, and if you want to call me, I can forward, you know, that information to you. They're dealing with geriatric care, you know, and how to manage all of that. So, you know, there are people that specialize in that. So, and we don't have any in Green Valley. Yes?
I'm curious, how are you funded?
That's self-pay. Medicare does not recognize care supports or caregiving as a medical need,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
That's what I was thinking.
Yes. So we're paid by the hour, you know, by families.
So you have a rate that you charge.
We have a rate, that's correct. We have a geriatric care management rate, and then we have an hourly rate for caregiving. So it just depends upon what you need, you know, but yes, it's
What you do here, what you describe here, that's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. But we manage it so well that we don't get the calls in the middle of the night. Unless there's a catastrophic fall or something, you know, we can't avoid that completely. But we take such good care of everybody during the day and on our daily basis that we avoid those catastrophic events and situations. So, but there is a lot of work to it.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother said to me, I went up to his house to see him. I hadn't seen him for a while because I'm so busy. And so I called him and said, can I bring a pizza up? So we went up to Oro Valley to visit my brother, and he says, you know, sis, you're 74 years old. You can't keep doing this like this, you know, you're old. And I said, you're only as old as you feel. You know, I love what I do. And that gives me life. And so my husband understands it, my staff understands it, and I don't expect I'm going anywhere anytime soon, as long as my health enables me. Any other thoughts about placement? Yes.
I would share with the group that we've been through several of the assisted living and care centers, and it's hard to make a choice until you visit them and know what they can offer you. So I suggest everybody go visit, and they want you to come visit. And you can get on their waiting list if you want. But for instance, the Peaks is not something other than just
Independent living.
independent living. And a lot of people think they're going to be able to stay there. So if you have fall or you continue doing They're gonna find another place for you to go to.
I have 3 clients at the Peaks now that want to stay there until they die. They pay us to come in and help support them. They have neighbors that look out for neighbors. And so they're a great support system. It's a great second level, you know. That doesn't mean that everybody should be there, but it is a great option. They have a great community center. They keep you active. They keep you fed. You know, there's a lot of positives. But yes, you are responsible for your own medications. You're responsible for your own personal care. You know, they do have housekeepers that you can hire to come in and do your housekeeping. So, you know, for the $2,200 a month compared to $10,000, you know, for a facility, you can afford a lot of in-home care, you know, to help supplement in places like the Peaks.
Right, but
And
at a certain point, if you need more care, they're gonna tell you that.
that's correct. And Silver Springs is the same way. Silver Springs is not a memory care. And so if you have memory care issues at a certain point, if there's any wandering risks or anything, they're not a lockdown facility. And so they will ask you to move because it's just an assisted living. It's not a memory care.
That's probably one of the hardest things. And you use the word transitional. But people
Pardon?
gotta- You use the word transitional. And
Mhm.
people need to be aware of it because you're at this level now. It's not. Some people may stay there, you know, but that doesn't. How do you prepare for the possibility of needing additional care?
Yes. And if you can afford someplace like La Posada that's going to support you, you know, all the way through the journey, you know, because they have transitional living there at La Posada. And so, you know, but not everybody can afford, you know, that level of care. But it just depends upon, you know, evaluating your situation personally. It's important to spend it. You know, I keep trying to tell my seniors, you know, you've worked all your life, you've saved all your life so you can be taken care of when you need it. You need it. Now is the time, you know, to dig into that savings and not save it for the kids or the great grandkids or whoever else. Take care of yourselves first and make sure that your care needs are met, you know, because I have so many people that are neglecting themselves trying to save something for another generation. And that's not why we saved it. We saved it so we could take care of ourselves when we needed it.
So we would call you, you would come in for a consultation
Correct.
to understand what our needs are,
Mhm.
what help we need from your company.
Correct. And that's every care agency, not just all, sorry, not just All Seasons, but, you know, every caregiver agency. And then you have to evaluate, are they insured? Are they bonded? Do they have skilled help? Do they have, you know, people that actually know what's going on, or just they warm bodies, you know? Yeah, you need to evaluate all of that. Hiring people off the street, you don't know what the situation is. I had a person in Spokane, Washington, that was an elderly couple. They were in their 90s. They wanted to stay in the home that they had built. So they hired a lady to come in. They had a little apartment in the basement, and they thought they'll give her the apartment in the basement for a little bit of help, you know, at home. Well, she ended up with squatters' rights. She did absolutely nothing for this couple. They ended up having to sell their home in order to get her out. And then they went into an assisted living. But she had squatters' rights because they didn't rent to her, you know, so they couldn't evict her. And so they couldn't get her out of their home. So the criminals have all the rights. So remember that when you're thinking of hiring people, you know, off of the street. You're going to pay a little less, but trust me, it's not worth the risk. I am responsible 100% for the people that I send into people's homes. And I have insurance and I have ways to support that. And so if anything happens with one of my caregivers, I am responsible and I will take care of you, you know, to make sure that if anything does happen that you're covered. So those are important things to know. when you're talking about bringing people in. In-home care is the best possible option. There is no memory care, there is no assisted living that gives you one-on-one care.
So
Yeah.
when I ask you if you're like in the very beginning of things, do you have like if we only needed 1 or 2 hours?
Mhm.
You
We have no
that?
minimum.
You have no minimum.
Correct. And, she asked if they were in the very beginning stages and they only needed 1 or 2 hours of something, would we do that? And, it may be the care management piece, that you need, which gives you those extra supports too. So it would just depend upon your situation, and we would come in and evaluate and talk to you about what we offer. And so, yes, sir.
How does hospice fit into all of this?
I make referrals to hospice regularly. I was a hospice social worker for 30 years, so I know who qualifies and how they qualify. I know how to get the proper verbiage. I showed up at the emergency room, Sahuarita Hospital. They were getting ready, a gentleman called me and he says, they're going to discharge my mom to home and she's incontinent and I don't know how to change a brief. And he says, what am I going to do? And so I left work. I went up to the hospital. I walked in. She was dying. She was, in the last stages of her life. They were going to discharge her to home with home health that they might get in within a few days, that will just fill up her med box and tell her what she needs to do. But I said to the family, I said, hospice is the best kept secret. You need to utilize this Medicare benefit on your behalf and on your husband's or wife's behalf, and so you can get the supports in. They still need us because they're not 24-hour care. They are not the people that come in and take care of you. What they do is come in and manage the medical pieces. They keep you comfortable. They're focusing on comfort care. They bring in all the equipment you need. They bring in all the medications you need. They bring in incontinence supplies. All of that's free of charge. Medicare pays 100% for everything that hospice does. You do have to qualify with a qualifying diagnosis, and dementia is a hard one to qualify. If you've had tremendous weight loss, if you've had frequent falls, if they're unable to speak less than 8 words, if they've been, did I say hospitalized? If they've been sent to the hospital, the emergency room, frequently here in the last, they're more than likely going to qualify for hospice care. But what you do is you call your local hospice. You find out. I know all of the hospice. There are 67 hospices in our community now. Tucson, that area. Huge number of hospices. So they're like flies, just hanging around trying to find that next admission. I know who's working well in the community. I know which home health agency is working well in the community. I have cell phone numbers for the people that are responsive. I have a nurse practitioner that does in-home care that I have herself. She won't let me give it out to the clients, but she gives it to me. So I can call her and say, this is what I need. And so I have those connections. And that's the nice thing about being here for the last 10 years in the medical field, is that I know all of these people. And I've worked at a lot of these hospice agencies, because if they didn't act right, I didn't stay. So if they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, I was out of there. So I have 1 or 2 that I refer to now that have actual care staff in this community. They either live in Sahuarita or they're, here close by. So they're able to respond to the people here. They're not clear up in Marana someplace and they get to you an hour later. So the lady that I brought home from the hospital, I went into the room, backing up again to that story, went into that room and I said, talk to them about hospice. And they said, I think that's what we need. I said, I think so too. So I made a call to my hospice person and I said, they're going to discharge. I need an immediate admission. And she says, we can do it. you know. So then I went out to the discharge planner. I said to the discharge planner, I said, we've had a change of plans. We're not doing home health. We're going to do hospice. She came in an uproar. She says, what do you mean blindsiding me? And I said, excuse me? And so then, you know, I said, the family I explained to them what hospice was, and the family felt that that was what would be good for them. And so I've got all that connected, and we got her home that afternoon. We got the discharge plan. She died 5 days later. But she was home with her kids. She had everything she needed. She was comfortable. She did great. And so then I had an administrator from Northwest Hospital, discharge charge nurse, that called me and reamed me out on the telephone. How dare you come in here and tell me that I can't, you know, that this patient is hospice appropriate. Who are you to know that? And I said, 30 years of hospice experience. And I'm a care manager that this family hired. And I said, that was the most appropriate discharge plan for her. And so I said, if I stepped on somebody's toes, I apologize. That was never my intention. My intention is to meet the needs of my client and to help them. And so never heard from her again. I was going to go up and tell her that she passed away 5 days later, you know, and was in perfect care. And her death was beautiful.
I just have a question. We were hospice volunteers, my husband and I, for 13 years in Wilcox.
Uh-huh.
It used to be they would reevaluate you to see if you were still qualified. Do they still do that?
The nurse case manager will come in. You know, they take me at my word because of my experience. So, you know, they did come to the hospital, had the family sign the information so they could send for medical records. They send for medical records, which can be done fairly quickly if the doctors are responding. And then they evaluate from the medical records what the situation is, and then they get a doctor's order. So then the nurse case manager comes out and does her complete assessment with the client. But they were able, on my word, and the records from the hospital where she was being discharged from.
Do they reassess every 3 months, every 6 months?
They do. You know, it's every 90 days. And then it's 4 months after that or something like that. I've had people that have been on hospice for 8 years. My husband was on for 2.5 years. But as long as you have a qualifying diagnosis and you are waxing and waning, you know, my husband would have an exacerbation of pneumonia and he would be down here and then he would get up and then it would never quite get back up to where he was, you know. So hospice is the only medical profession that documents on declines, the worst possible scenario, you know. So that's what Medicare wants to hear, is how bad are they?
So my question, listening to this story, your client, their patient, why would the doctor in the hospital have not recommended hospice for this person?
Our medical practitioners have a difficult time talking about death and dying. You know, that's why having an advocate is so important, because I get doctors to talk about the tough things. They would rather pass it off. And I'm not saying every doctor,
Right.
You know, it's a tough situation, but, you know, they're about living. They're not about dying. And I had a book that said, Death Interrupted is the name of the book. And it's an excellent read. And it was a good book. And it's kind of a heavy one, but it's from a doctor that's an intensive care doctor. And he was talking about people being admitted into intensive care that should have never been admitted there. They should have been admitted into comfort care. You know, they should have been referred to hospice. They should have never been in intensive care. And so death has been interrupted for us for so long. And we're living way too long. Some of us are in wonderful shape and it's all working well. Somebody that I admitted yesterday, you know, he's had heart ablations, he's had pacemaker surgeries twice, he's got a hernia that my husband is transporting him up to Tucson as we speak to talk about surgery on the hernia. I said to his wife, I said, he's 87 years old and he's had everything wrong. And I said to her, I said, are you doing this for him or are you doing this for you? And she says, that's what we need to talk about. And so we need to have those hard conversations with our practitioners. We need to say, when is hospice appropriate? When do we say enough is enough? When is the cost more than the benefit? So these are all questions we need to be prepared to ask. Yes, sir.
I think some hospitals have their own hospital.
Yes, they have.
You can talk about that.
There's one at TMC. It's not a hospital.
Yeah.
It's a hospice house. Yeah. And they are only for the last 5 days of life. You have to be at the end of life in order to qualify for that 24-hour care. They still charge Medicare for the 24-hour benefit. And so you have to be very close to the end of life. You have to have pain management that can't be managed at home. You have to have a family member that can't take care of you for whatever reason that justifies the need for that 24-hour care. But there's a high cost to that. And Medicare says, no, you can't use the hospice house until they meet this criteria. And it's usually about the last 5 days of life. Yes?
I have a situation. My wife is at the Villas.
Mm-hmm.
I have just been diagnosed with cancer.
Mm.
She can't come home.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that she can come home. But there's a good possibility I'll live longer than or she'll live longer than I do.
Yes.
Here's a question I've had. What do I do?
And that's where we need to have a conversation. You need to call me and we'll sit down and talk about,
It's
that
it's
plan
life.
B.
And okay, so let's turn to a different.
And whether we have family members, whether we have children, one of my clients said the other day, she says, what happens when your daughter disappears?
Yeah.
And I said, not everybody's a caregiver. I said, most families have 2 or 3 children, and we have an accountant, we have a caregiver, and then we have one that doesn't want to have anything to do with anything. And this is in most households. So you have one person that's willing to step up and do care. But I said, unfortunately, you have one, and she's not a caregiver. And she says, well, I have had a double mastectomy, and I had a horrible experience with chemo when she was 9 years old. I said, there's the key. I said, when you are talking to her about your events now and your possible dying now, it triggers PTSD from when she was 9 years old and traveled this horrible journey with you and watched you suffer. And she doesn't want to see that now. So she gets mad with her and hangs up because it's easier for her to be angry at her mom than it is to deal with the loss and the caregiving and the PTSD from her early childhood. So, there's a lot of mixed bags that we all deal with, in these journeys. And it's hard. It's hard for everybody involved. And that's where, again, my professional skills are beneficial, in helping people. I said to her, send her an emoji, a heart, a smiling face, send her something. And then after a day, send her something that says, I miss hearing your voice. And she's supposed to have a phone conversation with her daughter and her husband today. It was scheduled. And so how well that goes depends upon how well mom does with the control factors. But letting the daughter feel what she's feeling, and coping with it. So there's a lot of pieces involved in the journeys, and I don't envy any one of you for what you're going through, because it's the toughest job in the world. And that's why the mental health things are so important for all of you, to take care of yourselves. Because if you don't, it's going to be the situation like this gentleman, where there's a diagnosis he can't control. And now what do I do, in this situation? So we'll have a conversation, and you can call me. But everybody has a story. Everybody has a neighbor. So take a few of my brochures, share them. We're not here to make a fortune off of anybody. I had another caregiver agency that mentored me for a short time. It was a very short time because we had lunch, and she says, oh, if you bill in 15-minute increments, you can make $60,000 a month. And I said, that's not how I do business. So I bill by the month, so you know what to expect. And then at the end of the month, we evaluate, do we still need the same level of care? Do we still need more? What is the situation? And you know what to expect. And I've never spent less hours than they paid for. It's always been way more hours than they pay for, just because we care. And that's what it's all about. Yes, sir.
Our time, I think, is just about up. Does anybody have
Is this recorded like on the?
Yes.
Oh, good, thank you.
A last
It's
question.
recorded.
Anybody that,
You'll be able to. Does anybody have another question
I
you want
have
to
one
ask?
more question.
yes,
You said you brought your granddaughter into the
Yes.
company.
she's my office manager.
Okay, so is there a chance that when your brother convinces you to retire, your company will go on?
I actually, I took on a young man. He's only 30 years old, but I had seen him working in the community. He had an assisted living. He had, I was transporting in my wheelchair van a couple of his clients that he had. And so I followed him for a year, and I bugged him for a year to come join us. And so I said, if you can put up with me for a year, I'll put you into a partnership. So I've got an attorney right now that's drawing up the paperwork that says that Michael and Erica are going to be partners. They're going to own a percentage of the business, and it's been sweat equity. I've just handed it over to them. And then as they earn more sweat equity, they will grow in the company. I did put a clause in there that you will take care of me till I'm dead. So they will take care of my husband and I for as long as we need it, until we're out of here. So we do have a plan B. I'm great with plan Bs. And I have two amazing people. Erica is the office manager, and she has the business mind. And she's the one that says, we've got way too much on our credit card this month. Knock it off. And so she takes care of me that way. No more cars, she said, because I bought a wheelchair van, and I bought another car because I didn't want somebody stranded at the hospital. So, we're doing what needs to be done. And she's great. Michael is a mini me. And I didn't think I would ever find anyone as dedicated as I have been through my lifetime with care.
Convertible you bought, it's not
Yeah.
working?
No, I got a wheelchair van. I had to give that up. So
Well, listen, let me
thank you
just-
very much.
Let me just say thank you, and I just want to say a word. I have a friend in Michigan whose wife just died, and they brought her home, and they brought in somebody from the neighborhood, stole the, what do you call it, debit card, got the 3 numbers, and drained the bank account. Not only that, they took a second mortgage out on the house. So it just goes to show you how important somebody who's
That's right.
licensed, somebody who's credible we deal with, as opposed to a good friend. And it could be a good friend who we do not know.
That's right.
Who could do this. And this is going on right now. He's suffering from it, and saw him a couple of weeks ago. So Cynthia, we want to thank you. I hope it's a while before I need you, but you're there. I never know. I know you don't know.
Got another hand over here. I don't.
Oh, yeah.
Just really quick, the checklist or the list that you have for,
That's
after
another
all
workshop.
those things.
Yeah, that's another workshop. So hopefully they'll call me back and we'll do
I'll
that.
make sure they
But you
call
can
me
also
back.
come up to the office. We're in Continental Plaza, where the elevator is up to the conference room. We're the first office on the right. And so you can come up there and ask Erica for.
Because you want to have this stuff done ahead of time. not-
Absolutely, absolutely. The Lutheran Church is wanting me to come and do that end of life
Oh, good.
piece also. Yeah, so
What
don't have
was
anything
that
scheduled now.
What was that checklist that you mentioned? I remember the checklist, but I don't know.
It just says end of life care, after what to do after a
Chad,
death.
Can you tell us how we can get this? This has all been recorded. It's all going to be on the internet. How do they go about getting on the internet to get this program repeated?
Well, it's on YouTube,
It's on YouTube.
and if they go to YouTube, it's difficult to find because if you type in UMCGV, it takes you to another Methodist church. So I don't know. It's the one in Henderson, Nevada. It's
There's another Methodist church in Green Valley, Nevada.
Nevada, yeah. And so do not get.
Some of our offerings have been going over there.
Yeah.
So maybe it might, well, through our website, of course, umcgv.org, and then go to the tab where it says, I think one of the drop down tabs says Dementia Care
Videos,
Forum.
yeah.
So that'd be the best way is
So
through the
this
church's
has all been
website.
recorded, and you can look at it again. And if you have any problems, call Chad on the church line.
Yeah.
Next week, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Next month, not next week, also on December 17th or on the 17th, David Torres is going to be here, and he's with FEMA Council on Aging, and he'll be here to talk. So we want to thank you for coming, and we look forward to seeing you next week. And I've learned some things that my wife and I are going to have to do. We're going to get one of those bags by the floor. So
There you go.
Let's